We walked for a while and came to Castle Square. On the same side of the street was the Castle Hotel and Lounge. Nestling in the foreground was a magnificent, awe-inspiring, majestic Norman castle. As we entered the lounge, we could see it was furnished as a medieval castle might have been. There were large iron statues in the form of knights and squires distributed about the room. The ceiling was expansive and decorative, with huge wooden beams spanning its entire length. Suspended from the ceiling were huge crystalline chandeliers illuminating the entire room in subdued light. Could you expand on that castle, how it looked?
What, in the movie?
No, you went to after the movie for hot tea. You went to a castle, and it was decorated.
Castle, medieval castle.
Yeah, how does it look? Give us your...
It was dingy, it smelled. It smelled of dampness.
It smelled of mold.
Gold?
It smelled of mold and dampness.
It smelled decayed and...
Decay.
Yeah, there's nothing done. Nothing done. Nobody swept the place or nothing. We just left.
I see. So it was in pretty bad shape.
Say?
It was in pretty bad shape, the castle. It was in pretty bad shape. It was run down.
Yeah, well, it was pre-war.
And what year do you think that how old do you think that castle was?
The castles, like I said, pre-war.
So like 2 or 3 years?
Probably 40, 50 years old.
Okay. All right, here we go. She ordered tea and crumpets, and I peered at her as she sat there, with her legs crossed, admiring her many portraits displayed on the 2 outside walls. The atmosphere was subtle and quiet, with playing of background music by a cathedral organ, which Jean found to her liking and interest. We sat there and talked mostly of small things, her work, her family, and mostly the end of the war. Not once did she mention her interest in music or the playing of the cathedral organ in the background.
The organ was big, it was 3 feet high.
What was?
Yeah.
The cathedral organ?
Cathedral organ, yeah.
Was it
all mahogany wood?
Yeah. Was it run by steam, or was that a pipe organ?
It was a pipe organ, air.
And what type?
Yeah, you had a pump with his feet.
And what type of person do you remember that was playing it? Was it a younger person or an older person?
Older person, yeah.
Because, in today's time, some Catholic Church are privileged to have pipe organs, and they're very expensive, in the millions. But the problem is, they can't find anyone that knows how to play them.
How to play it, yeah.
They can't find anyone today.
You gotta pump the air in and you gotta go on.
They know how to play them. Yeah, you can't find them. This was all becoming quite familiar, having gone through the same nostalgic event with Anne, only to be saddened by her departure, not knowing when or if we would ever see each other again. This time around did not make it less troublesome. With the playing of Auld Lang Syne, say that again.
Auld Lang Syne.
Auld Lang Syne.
That's a farewell song.
Okay, that's what they're singing on the cathedral organ. Do you remember that song, Claire?
What?
Auld Lang Syne?
Yeah.
That's just a phrase. There is a song named, but basically it's a saying goodbye.
Say goodbye. On the cathedral organ, after talking for several hours, we departed the castle lounge, and we once again in the midst of the castle square. It was getting late, and began looking about for a cab to take us back up the hill. Jean spotted one, and I hailed it down. Having forgotten the address, I relied on Jean to tell the driver where to go. In a relatively short time, we arrived at the front gate of Jean's cottage, and as she stood there observing the bomber formation overhead, I reached behind her, put my arms around her waist, and kissed her on the neck. And gee, what a guy. You're supposed to be in a war there. We stood until the formation was out of sight, but he could still hear the drone of the powerful engines in the distance. She turned around toward me and almost a whisper sighed, "Aren't you frightened to be going in that direction, especially on ground?" With some reluctance, I shrugged my shoulders and explained, "Certainly, I'm frightened over it, but what can I do? That's what I got stuck with, and I just had to try to make the best of a bad situation." With that, she grasped me tightly and held on to me with her head buried in my chest. I then asked her if I might come and visit each evening around 1900 to 2000 hours to chat with your parents and her. She smiled with approval and wanted to know if I was to manage coming each night. I have gave her my plan that I had been developing over a period of time. I then proceeded to inform her of my devious plan. I would leave the billet area nightly with the pretext of going for a shower. Since the shower building was halfway to her place, I would shower and then walk up to her place. By going to the shower building, I did not have to sign in and out, but was freed up for several hours. She kissed me and said I was very kind and a conniver, but an adorable conniver. I was an adorable conniver.
Yeah.
She liked the plan, and her parents would be pleased to have my company nightly. So you went at the base, and you told them that you were going to a shower. And at that time there, that was halfway to Jean's house, and you were able to have 2 or 3 hours worth of free time when you went up to the shower, and you didn't sign out. So instead of going right back to the billet, you went up to Jean's house.
Yeah, well, it was close enough to the orderly room, yeah.
And how many days did you do this for?
Well, since while we were there every day, every other night, whenever it got off.
Did you ever get any trouble for that?
No.
So no one knew that after you took a shower you weren't.
Well, you don't know, and the guy at the reception desk knew what was going on. Yeah, but that what were they going to do?
But you had it figured out that as strict as the Army is and knowing your whereabouts, during the shower period that was halfway across the town, they weren't monitoring.
No, they wouldn't. They were real ladies. They were in a combat zone. Yeah, that was all chicken stuff.
Okay, so okay. I understand that. So it worked. Your plan worked out fine.
The what?
Your plan worked out fine. That plan you had worked out fine.
What plan?
The plan to leave the shower and go to see Jean.
Well, the showers are just a little above her house.
Yeah, so that
So when I checked out, I got a pass for a shower.
yeah.
And it didn't have the time on it.
Okay, so that worked out fine for you.
Yeah.
Okay.
How long did you do this?
Well, as long as we were there.
Okay, was that?
I was there probably 6 months.
That's
6 months, yeah. Then we moved out.
Right.
You never stayed long. You never let you stay up there long anywhere.
No.
It keeps moving around.
Now, when you left there, I take it the girlfriend or the woman lived in that area.
Yeah.
After so many months or however long, you left the shower and they transferred you to another building.
Well, I met her parents. We had tea and crumpets at her house, and they were very nice parents. But the father was always dressed up, had a vest on, a shirt, a tie on.
Well, now, was that because it was an English customer?
Yeah.
Dressed more formally?
Yeah. I like the English. Yeah.
So that plan worked out good, and because of your plan, you were able to see Jean quite a bit, and she referred to you as the adorable conniver. We looked up at another group of bombers headed for the Channel. This time, they were escorted by British Spitfires. What could you tell us about the British Spitfires?
Spitfire, when you heard those, they scared the hell out of you. Planes coming out of the backside.
Oh, wow.
And they had one little seat, one flyer over, one person in that seat. And when they dive, they scream going down.
Do they fly low?
They fly above the artillery, yeah.
I see.
They go out at 10 o'clock and come back at 12 o'clock. Bomb cities in Germany.
So when you see the British Spitfires, generally, how many Spitfires were in formation?
Well, a squadron had 8 Spitfires, and they probably took out half the squadron. And the other half bombed during the daytime.
So the Spitfire is a very powerful tool during World War II.
Oh, yeah.
Spitfire was a very powerful tool. With their bluish flame jetting out of their exhaust, we listened as we got out of sight. After a while, even the sound was lost as they reached the Channel. The drone of Spitfires and their eerie exhaust sent a steady chill throughout my body in anticipation what lay ahead of me in a very short time. So when you finally got to combat, was there a lot of Spitfires?
At night, yeah, they had a day shift, day tour, night tours, yeah. They bombed 24 hours a day.
Were you ever in a situation when the Spitfires were coming that you thought you might be involved in friendly fire?
Well, we went to the airway showers.
And that
And the
happened?
sirens going up to go to the airway showers.
Okay.
Wow. Let's see. I turned to face Jean as I looked upon her, that she appeared all sensual and inviting with the loveliness, all that entered my consciousness, and I desired her intensely pent up in my body. She sensed my plight, and I believe she shared my desire, but was torn between her own passion and virtuous righteousness. I kissed Jean goodnight and thanked her for a great and memorable weekend, saying that she looked beautiful tonight, and I appreciated the felt privilege that she would make that much of an effort to please me, and always remember how she looked tonight and how her innermost desires. She looked up and her eyes told me everything I wanted to know. I read them perfectly. As she turned towards her cottage, she whispered, "Don't forget tomorrow night. I'm looking forward to it." With that, she ran to the front door, turned and waved, and disappeared inside. Walking back to the billets, I again reviewed the day's event, and once again considered myself fortunate to have met a woman like Jean. I was not as confused as I had been with Anne, and perhaps was due to the fact I did not feel much undue pressure from Jean as I had from Anne. In any event, it was too late to try to sort out the two happenings. All I knew for sure was Jean took one day at a time, and I was grateful and appreciative for that. She did not, nor did Anne, probe or seek anything beyond that. Both were content to be together for what little time I had left. For the next 2.5 weeks, I executed my plan to perfection, with only one serious exception. Toward the end of the first week, while at Jean's, just before the start of the BBC newscast, I was overcome with a good case of sickness. Not wishing to embarrass my host, mostly myself, I made up some excuse and I must return to the billets for a short time, but returned momentarily. Hurried down the shower building and to the latrine. I made it in time and in more ways than imaginable. It appeared that Sergeant Whaley was looking for me and could not locate me. Fink by accident found me in the latrine and relayed the message to me. Fink did not mention he did search the shower area earlier, but not see me there. I replied that I had gone outside behind the building for some fresh air. Upon my return to the orderly room, Sergeant Whaley informed me I had an urgent telegram. I immediately became apprehensive and mystified regarding its contents. My first inclination was that from home, my mother and Sally. Upon opening the telegram, I read, "Have a merry and safe Christmas. All the best for the new year. Signed, Love Ann." I realized as its contents, but it also left me with pangs of guilt and remorse. I felt intensely that I betrayed Ann and our sincere and loving relationship. Fink noticed my despair and asked, "Bad news?" I quickly rejoined saying, "No, it's a telegram from home, and I guess I got a little homesick reading it." He nodded and left the room. After I recovered sufficiently, I decided not to go back to Jean's that afternoon. Instead, I wrote several letters, one to Ann, one to Mother, and one to Sally. For all my good intentions, I could not help thinking about Jean and all we were missing with so much little time left. After breakfast the next morning, we had a complete weapons check, along with a thorough equipment inspection. It had connotations of a serious nature, as Captain Drooler was present along with the battalion commander, Colonel Drain, and had all the makings of a final phase-out of our stay here in Haverfordwest in preparation for our crossing of the Channel. After the inspection, I approached Fink regarding up my hill to see Jean. At first he smiled slightly about hearing my plan for nightly pass without signing in and out, but then finally agreed with my deception and said he would cover for me in the event there was another episode like last night, so we would know my exact location. I thanked him for his discretion, and he only smiled and said he would accompany me shortly. That night I gathered some items I had saved from the PX rations, an assortment of chocolate bars, chewing gum, and some canned Spam, several tins of hard candy, shaving cream, and 5 to 6 packs of razor blade, and couple fountain pens and pencils. These items in Wales and England were rationed or non-existent during the time I spent here. I knew Jean and her parents would appreciate them, and unquestionably a small token of repayment for all their kindness they had shown me. That night, on my way to the shower building, I carried along my old overnight bag, which I put the PX rations in for the youngs. It was inconspicuous, as almost everyone carried a bag of some sorts to the shower for their change of clothes or towel, or shaving articles. I was most certainly concerned about the chocolates melting in the warm environment of the shower, and I hurried my shower as quickly as I could. Upon reaching Jean's cottage, I quickly opened the gate and walked up the short cobblestone entrance and gave the large brass knocker several bangs. Jean quickly came to the door and was elated and jubilant at seeing me. She remarked, "I thought you shipped out and could not return to say goodbye." I smiled and replied that we had an inspection last night and it was too late to return afterward. With that, she ushered me into the parlor where Mr. and Mrs. Young greeted me warmly, and Mrs. Young said, "I just came in time for tea." We talked for a while until the news came on at 2100 hours from London. Jean sat behind me and held my hand, and I was reminded again of Anne and her telegram. Once again, pangs of guilt overcame me, and it was only when Mrs. Young handed me a cup of hot tea that I recovered sufficiently to bring myself back to reality and the company of Jean and her parents. We discussed the latest news events while Jean kept mostly silent and just listened intently to what we said. After a bit, I reached for my overnight bag and began to empty the contents on the coffee table near me. Jean looked at it in amazement, and the Youngs were beside themselves at the sight of seeing sugar or canned Spam. I felt happy for them and was grateful that I could contribute something to make their dreary life a little bit more cheerful and effective. As I watched them handling the various items I had brought for them, I could not help thinking how fortunate we are back in the States for not going through the pain and the suffering these people were enduring. They could not thank me enough, and after many meetings, I felt embarrassed and tried to steer them into another subject. It was at this moment that Mr. Young brought out some of her Welch favorite fruitcake she had made this summer for the coming holidays. It was savory and delectable, and I remarked that it was much a richer prize than all the articles I brought for them tonight. We all laughed, and I felt good, and I had brought some joy and goodwill to the very sincere and loving family. I did not appreciate the full significance of the joyous evening until Christmas actually came upon me on the frozen ground of the Ardennes several weeks later. How do you pronounce that? Ardennes?
Ardennes.
Explain what the Ardennes is.
That's a battlefield.
Explain it. Tell me more.
Why? It's a wooded area. Woods, bushes, passing it, and the Germans use it to get one access to another, and we use the same thing. And then when we meet, we fight ourselves to kill one another and go on.
And that was how you spent your Christmas.
Huh?
That's how you spent your Christmas, right?
Yeah. Well, Christmas didn't matter over there.
Christmas didn't matter.
English didn't celebrate Christmas like we did.
But you were in combat during that next Christmas. And when you were in combat, how many months were you outside before you were back into a building during real combat?
We never stayed in a building. The idea is you don't stay in a building because you're zeroed in. What you do, you keep moving on the ground outside. You can move acres on the ground, but in the building, they get you idolized and they just shoot the hell out of you. So they say stay out of the buildings.
So how many months were you outside?
Outside for 6 months in the wintertime.
Is that where you got frostbite at?
Yeah, that's where I got the frostbite.
And how's that frostbite affecting your leg now?
Right now, last night I put a towel on it to keep the heat in my foot. It didn't work. Then I put numbing on it. I numb it.
So almost 80 years later, your frostbite is still...
I had it last night.
It's major problem.
Yeah. And especially when it gets cool here. It's the same temperature that we had over there. It was cool last night here.
Well, if you're outside for several months, where would you sleep?
Where would you sleep?
Yeah.
Usually on a road someplace.
On a road?
Yeah. And you put your shower hat on, put the guards out, and then wrap up in a blanket or something and sleep if you could.
Did you get used to this cold?
What?
Did you ever get used to this cold weather?
No. It was better than staying in the super foxhole.
So how many, you find a road and just sleep on the road?
You know what?
You'd find a road, a dirt road, and just sleep on the road?
dirt road or cement road, put the guards out, and that was it.
Did you sleep inside a sleeping bag?
Oh, we didn't sleep, nothing could zip her up. You say everything loose.
Why wouldn't you sleep inside a sleeping bag?
Because if you zipped up, you have a hard time getting out if the enemy is coming after you.
You gotta be mobile.
So you
So
would
you could
be,
wrap it around it, but you couldn't zip it up. You couldn't zip inside of it.
did some of the soldiers zip themselves in?
Well, some of them did probably, yeah. They got cold about
But
30
the rule is
o'clock.
don't zip the sleeping bag because if you get attacked, you're not gonna get out in time.
I can't get out of it. You can't zip yourself up and take it. And the other guys took their shoes off too. And they were told, don't take your shoes off. And then when we got attacked, they were looking for the shoes, they got killed.
Wow. And you witnessed that?
Oh yeah, that was my company, yeah. So you sleep with your shoes on. That's convenient because you can move anyway.
Yeah,
And it's a little warmer with the shoe, huh?
think,
Huh?
I said, think,
Yeah, yeah.
if you can't, you're not gonna run very far on stones and bare feet, you gotta have shoes
Yeah,
on.
yeah. You sleep with your shoes on.
So let me paint the picture. How many soldiers would be sleeping on the road?
How many soldiers?
Yeah, soldiers would be sleeping on the road.
How many soldiers?
Yeah, we're sleeping on that road.
Well, a company is 360 men, and they spread those guys over maybe 20 miles. They don't put them all in one road. They spread them over 20
And what
miles.
type of security would you have when you're sleeping?
Well, they had guards out, 3 hours on, 3 hours off.
And all those
No lights on, no smoking, no nothing.
all those nights that you slept outside during the winter, how many times did you were awakened abruptly because of possible combat during the night?
No, we never got attacked, no.
You never got attacked?
No, they were, intelligence was smart enough to put us in isolated areas where the Germans were working at.
Out of the 350 men, about how many returned?
Home?
Yeah,
350 men? Probably, I would say 2/3.
2/3.
That's about probably 150 men come back out of 300.
And all the rest were shot.
Well, they're shot into the hospitals or they went to AWOL or whatever hell they did.
And then where were the cooks?
Cooks were maybe 3 miles behind us, but they're always trailing us, and they put up wonderful meals,
And
day or night,
Really?
rain or shine.
the cooks were top of the line.
And they were about 5 miles behind.
So when you were sleeping, when it came to like 3 or 4 in the morning, the cooks start preparing your breakfast.
They were starting getting breakfast if it was feasible, if it was safe enough. But
if
if
it
they
wasn't
were in an
safe
active area, they give you K-ration, as you got up, they just had your K-ration and so on, and see you around.
And that was it.
Yeah,
Hey,
which the only thing they could do.
Yeah.
The cooks couldn't set up a gas stove up and cook the oven and everything else, and then they all get killed.
well,
Yeah.
I'm sure that the long-term soldiers who had been in before K rations became
Yeah,
available,
K-rations, yeah.
they were probably,
You were issued three boxes of K-rations.
wow,
Sometimes you lived on that for a week, a month, yeah,
I'm glad to have them.
and what you could steal on the farm.
Didn't you also one time prepare a cow and a deer?
A what?
Didn't you one time prepare a cow and a deer for dinner? A deer or a cow for dinner?
Yeah, I shot the deer, and the butcher opened it up, the GI butcher opened it up, and there was a baby deer inside, it's still alive.
And what about the cow?
The cow, they butchered it up, and we had that.
And how were those steaks?
Well, there was a tender cow. They made steaks out of it, stuff it up for breakfast.
Was that a big treat?
Yeah, well, the cooks are good cooks. They could improvise.
I'm just trying to picture this when you're sleeping on the street. What was the security like? How many security were there, and what type of
Well,
weapons?
if you're walking all day in the rain or something and you need some sleep, any place you pop your fat rear in is good to sleep on, yeah. And you fall asleep right away, you don't take no sleep tablets or nothing, no problem sleeping.
Yeah,
As
no,
long as they got the guards out, we're secure.
You wrap yourselves up in tarp or